exists, then it is valid. What do I mean? We live in a world where, well, fundamentally we don't even know how we exist. We're some kind of spontaneous emergence of a mysterious void. We might attach faith and belief to it and say it's Jesus, it's the Almighty Allah, it's the ancestors. Whatever you, in your semiotic understanding of the world and the word you attach to this universal essence, deem, I want to say, if it exists, it is valid. There wouldn't be anything we witness around if it didn't have the capacity to live in the first place. Now, I want to send that sentiment, and I want us to ring it into the context of music as we consume it today. Capitalism narrows down everything to product placement, and as a result it designates organic human behavior in the realm of categories, genres, and all kinds of separations that really are just artificial boundaries that make it neat and convenient for businessmen to sell things without them filtering into each other. But real life doesn't work like that, because things do filter into each other, and you can't make very clean, neat separations between things as you would a salad and, a beer. Who says you can't have a beer salad? My point is, the coming together of different elements is an inevitable part of life, which makes it difficult for artists with an eclectic spirit, artists who want to do something that is outside of the realm of what capitalism considers important. Because the kind of industrial complex that we are living in the configuration of forces us to take whatever creativity we have, us being artists, and to kind of shove it into a category that already exists. Take South Africa, a country with its own unique, vast, diverse heritage and many elements that are taken and inspired by the rest of the world. Hip-hop in particular, rap music being part of that hip-hop strand. The way we have come to consume and as a result to produce rap is based on international trends that narrow down the kind of rap and hip-hop we can create into tropes of dance music, which in today's era are echoed in the trap sound. Other aspects of rap music get left out. And when I say left out, they get cornered into fringe or so-called alternative boxes, where the idea is they do not make that much revenue, and as a result any artist whose spirit speaks to that audience is basically pigeonholing themselves into a niche brand that might not yield as much result. That kind of sentiment echoes a lot of disheartening spirit into artists who want to, number one, speak in a more reflective, in a more intimate, in a more slower tone that doesn't lend itself to the boom boom clap of the clubs and to the escapist metronomes of electronic dance influenced rap music. I had to preamble this because I'm talking about an artist whose brilliance cannot shine as much as it probably would in a bigger market that had a greater capacity to assimilate more diversity into its market. Mandi Sanduna, aka Zulu Mecca, an MC who broke into the social media rungs by giving us some of the most refreshing freestyles, which were filled with such potent poetry that mesmerized us in its minimalistic approach and in its multi-syllable flair. She is an MC top tier extraordinaire, somebody who pulls from the tradition of a Tumi Mulekane and a Yugen Black Rock and is able to give us this balance of deep cryptic occult thoughts, of swimming in the oceanic depths of the mind, and yet peek into something that has the flair to appeal to the everyday person because it's delivered in a way which strives to be simplistic in the way that it conversates. It's rap through dialogue, and Zulu Mecca does it excellently with expert mastery. She gives us the latest project, an EP, which is a follow-up to a project that was basically kind of her breakthrough in the context of this industrial complex, which was called Of Angels and Ancestors. Now, Zulu Mecca is unique in her portrayal of herself. We live in an environment where the artist depicts themselves as an agent of brand. So we're used to the glossy, shiny image of the rapper in the latest shades and the latest sneakers, or a rapper who tries to kind of bring themselves as a homegrown expression of whatever ghetto they come from. So they'd be simple, rocking whatever latest urban gear, but basically simple enough for you to feel like this is the everyday person I'd meet on the street, and I'd give them time to at least give me a little bit of their lives and what it's about. Zulu Mecca, as I said previously, by kind of referencing Yugen Blackrock. I'm not doing that because of the whole female to female thing. We're gonna get into that later on, because fundamentally rap is not a gendered art form. Anybody who does rap, anybody who's skillful at rap is an incredible MC. Terms like femc should really be defunct by now because they are unnecessary to what the craft is all about. The human experience is something that we all experience or go through in ways that are both similar but also have their own unique variations. And whether this is man to man, man to woman, woman to woman, and everything in between, we're all people. And we learn from each other, especially when we open up our eyes and ears to people whose lives might be radically perceived as different from ours. So the whole Yugen and Zulu Mecca thing is not because of the female dynamic. I'm bringing it to fore because they're both artists who pull from the mythological, magical place. They present themselves as mythical creatures, larger than life, and what they do through that is they elevate themselves beyond just being normal people. They disappear, which allows them to adopt a character that is able to embody life almost as the way God embodies the whole universe. There are artists who stand in that steep, who position themselves as kind of silent divinities who scope for us a broad aspect of what the whole universe is about, brushed through the strokes of particular cultural channels. Zulu Mecca is basically a god. Zulu Mecca emerges from this transcendental place, and she basically gives us the whole universe in a brief moment. This is a 7-track EP. It really isn't that much time, but Zulu Mecca doesn't need that much time because she has this knack of being able to make small little glimpses turn into whole lifetimes. And it's in how she uses her wording, it's in the broad scope of her vocabulary, and fundamentally it's in how she carries across vocally. She is able to have a globalist appeal, but at the very same time her accent is organically South African. She's fluent in English, and in the kind of English that many would deem overtly sophisticated. So this is not necessarily a project that the broader populace who might not necessarily be literarily inclined or just like words and books might be into. She speaks in a language that is filled with the rich, dense, literary centered approach. And if you like that, this is definitely something you could sip from the cup of, because she definitely beseeches us and calls us in to consider something very profound. Again, this very essential core conversation of capitalism narrowing down the capabilities of creativity and how we can bring ourselves across, which brings her to ask the question in the stead of a god, do happy people make good art? Because there is this common misconception that because we live in a world which fundamentally subjects us to whims which are not of our own wanting or doing, but are rather the result of historical dispositions placed on us by force, power, and violence, a lot of us carry trauma. Humanity is in a collectively traumatic place, globally speaking, and as a result, a lot of art comes from a place of pain, seeking to be joyful. To the point where many have said, You don't make good art if you don't have a lot of pain. Zulu Mecca asks this question and she says to us, do happy people make good art? Because fundamentally that makes us look at two things. What does it truly mean to be happy, and what is good art? And I think this project, with its concept of the tears flowing into a narrative that gives us an engagement of selfhood and the question of where it stands in the narrow capitalistic dimension. From broken canvas to the last joint. What this is a very meticulously structured project of how we start from a place of darkness and slowly emerge into finding that happiness. And Zulu Mecca's whole approach in introducing this dynamic is in saying happiness resides in the things that make you feel valued for the person you've become. And a lot of that is understanding both the things you could not control about your life and the things that you now can. And by bringing this into a delicate balance of choosing the right friends, understanding the difference between being forced into something because of the massive peer pressure and really choosing what you desire, and also making room for disappointment, because everybody is slowly discovering themselves, and as such they're bound to make mistakes. And the glory of making mistakes is something truly divine, something Zulu Mecca brings us to sing forever about, something that she introduces us into the context of culture of. And she says we don't choose where, how, and who we're born as, but we definitely can choose how we navigate those limitations, because characteristically her whole career is something that is about how an artist of an excellent lyrical quality can navigate the very narrow limitations of South Africa's commercial scope. She gives us a trip-hop, jazz, rap influenced sonic scope, and basically brings us into a world which feels smoky, grey. My only hitch would be that this project is carried across in the same note throughout, so it kind of feels like one long soundtrack of Zulu Mecca giving us the sermon of change and how to uplift yourself. There's not much variety in how the sonic scope is structured. So as much as the universe is broad, it's really done with a limited set of colors. It's done with a blue note, a set of colors that bring us more to anguish and more to these darker realms of the human place than they do these more colorful parts. And again, that's just part of Zulu Mecca's right as an artist to express herself, and she does this very, very well. So lyrically, she's able to blend into these kind of woozy, slow, and serenading kind of beats, bringing us into the context of who can listen to this project. Anybody who loves music for reflection's sake, anybody who loves to get a little bit of philosophy and wisdom from their artists, anybody who loves to be carried away into a place that attempts to create something a little bit more therapeutic in dialogue form, you will appreciate this project if you are for that kind of context. And as a result, like anywhere in the world, South Africa has masses of people who are into that. So again, this is a project that also attempts to deconstruct this misconception that there is no real marketplace for spoken word art and reflective music in the context of the South African marketplace. Zulu Mecca is able to kind of ease us through this narrative, and I think with all that being said, we have the makings of one of the most profound MCs who is taking it upon themselves to embody everybody's struggle and distill it in a way that speaks to her experiences and ask us very vital questions about what it means to make art in these days and times. She unapologetically chooses her sonic scope. She unapologetically stands by what many see as failing and waning principles of just sticking to a quote-unquote backpack type of rap. And she nonetheless goes ahead and does it because she sees the potential, not only in the world, but in her own country, to teach people about their own myths and as a result their own magic and the power of sourcing from their own immediate references. Because as I said, Zulu Mecca carries this whole project in English, but it is authentically African in the way she paints the images of people, self, the experience, and the distinct particular images she draws. She parallels from the great archetypes of Egypt, but also goes back to what Africa's kingdoms and empires in the particular Southern African migrating pattern have brought to us. Her stories are insightful. They come from somebody who has taken the time to take all of these stories in and show us that they really are a single story in a varying way. I give this an 8 out of 10. The audacity, the lyrical mastery, the usage of mythology to bring us back into historical themes that, for one, remind us that wherever we're going, we kind of have to know where we come from. And again, she is putting herself in the tradition of SA great rap lyricists and doing it in a way that is unique to her. Vocally, the rasp, the calm, the cool that oozes from this woman is God-esque and positions itself as a transcendent force, telling us a story that really brings us slowly into the moment and allows us to really tap into this. So again, if your vibe is being able to just sit down and recline and let the music sink into your DNA and slowly have the conversation with your subconscious about how we navigate these limitations of the world, you'll really love this project. That little extra too is for the fact that as a musical project, it doesn't carry a lot of sonic technical diversity. It's basically jazz rap. It's monotonous. It's created in the same way, but it does allow itself to become what it is with a sense of real enjoyment, because the artist behind it understands how to work within those limitations. Shout out to Stay Low and the movement of artists who are affirming and expanding what's possible for rappers in South Africa. We're gonna keep on having this conversation of whether or not it is lucrative to not make music for the dance floor, whether or not it is lucrative to make music that doesn't call us out into the winds of enjoyment, but brings us into a place that is way more reflective, and music that actually forces us to think rather than music that we use to escape our thoughts and flow into the vast world of emotion. Zulu Mecca, very important artist, definitely a top 5 dead or alive MC, definitely the best we have right now in terms of lyricism, definitely somebody who stands way above most in terms of understanding who they are and how they can bring their story across, one, to their people, and generally to everybody else. I'm VJ, the brother from the ancient mother, and I'm here to say that if it exists, it is valid. Zulu Mecca exists, and she's here to show you that she is valid in ways that are bringing us closer to the question, do happy people make good art? And the answer, as is given in the project, is of course they do. Because good art comes from one thing and one thing only, staying true to the self. So if you feel like crying, allow those tears to flow down, and after that, find ways of empowering yourself and bringing yourself in a space where that pain and that fear works for you instead of against you. And I think this is what WEPT as a project is here to bring us to. Tears are not a sign of weakness. The capitalist scope is not going to break us into a momentum where we give up on the art we really want to make. So if it means that we're going to spend endless nights agonizingly making the art we want, then so be it. The revolution must come, and eventually it will come, because thought sparks it all into being. I love you. Please subscribe if you agree with me. If you don't, I love doing these reviews, but I also like hearing what you think of them. It's the Headspace, South Africa's most poignant hip-hop podcast. Come on.